Are you ready to talk about Blue Fire?
Blue Fire?
You didn't see the marketing on this? They called
No.
it Blue Fire in
No.
the social media.
Seriously?
I think so.
Blue Fire, huh?
Well, I'll have to go back and check that. I can edit that out if I'm wrong, but I think that's what they did. Okay, before we get carried away with the new model, cosmetic, and changes to the skis, let's talk a little bit about our impressions from the past couple of years. So back in 2017, Salomon started introducing updated geometries, constructions to their skis. First came the universal skate ski in the 34 mold, the Saks 34 construction. And the classic skis followed the year after. All that stuff was on the World Cup just about a year ahead of its release date. It was a pretty fast development cycle. And those improvements were marked, really, really big. With Salomon, I feel like they do amazing front-end work and development. And when they show up with a new ski, often at a championship like Lati, it's a difference maker right away. And some of those early productions, even in the standard consumer production, are the best we've seen. The very first round of those new skis remains as good as anything that I've seen from them since then. It's not like we see the same level of incremental year-to-year improvement in Salomon as I feel like we've seen from Fischer really consistently. That they're always just a tiny bit better. Having said that, the bar's high. There's some of the fastest skis out there without any question, particularly just in straight-out glide, and that's true of both classic and skate. What are your impressions from the past season of working with Salomon skis?
So, I don't think I skied on Salomon all that much this past winter. I don't think we had that many skis, did we?
That is an issue. We sold out early
in our
of the
size.
main. Yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't think there was anything to ski on, but I did in early season hop on our pair of 182 cold skate skis, and I was using them at Prospect, which for our testing tends to be fresher, colder, new snow, and Salomon hasn't worked as well in that kind of softer new snow, but those felt really good.
But part of that also is you were on 182s, and normally you've been skiing on 187s, and that 187 material might be a little tough in the bridge.
Could be
to lower things and flatten them out just a little bit.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, and I'm not sure whether that's an adjustment from Salomon's end or an adjustment on our end to try some softer skis. We have often gravitated toward stiffer cambers because in many of the conditions, particularly the early season testing conditions that we have seen, it seems almost impossible to go too stiff in the mid-flex values with these skis. But I think in the softer conditions, you can run them pretty darn soft and have really good success. And we've seen that working with athletes as well. For instance, Ava Thurston has a pair of 182s that she got before World Juniors year before last. And they remain just about her best pair of skis. And they're an 82, and her other stuff is 87 and stronger. But the thing about Salomon, I feel, is that when you find a ski that runs fast, it also produces good speed. This is not always the case. Sometimes we find skis that are really good in active skiing and they produce really high average speed when you're moving on them, even though they're not as fast in passive speed or in just the glide, what you would measure in a speed trap, say. But Salomon's, I think, they're quite easy to pick. Just pick the ones that run fast. That's the asset, and they do run really fast. Salomon has great base material program. Their distribution of bases and conditions is really even. I think like where Fischer's 28 base, their universal base is like a do everything base, and there's a little room for their A5 cold and a little room for their clear base, the 30 base at the wet end. Salomon really has this equal distribution of load with the base materials. Their F base, the cold base, is maybe one of the better bases in North America. The reference cambers on that tend to be skewed a little more toward the cold. I almost wish they would have some more relaxed cambers with the cold material, the cold base material. But they're reliably good cold skis.
But not for next year. or do you not want to talk about next year? But isn't their universal base like a wider condition space?
Well, I think it's just better, and we will come to that. I think the weakness has been their Y base. Their universal base is not my favorite. I don't think it's as good, say, as the Fisher base, but that's changing. Their clear base, the 126 base, is tremendous. It's the best clear base in the industry without question, and it remains the same base for next year, even though the backing cosmetic is all bright rainbow colors. Have you seen the pictures?
No.
I haven't seen the ski yet. This is just a universal, though. Yeah. So we need to talk about what's different.
Okay.
Because it's a new cosmetic and it is a different model. There's a new universal base material. That's the biggest news. This, I think it's called the 10 base. The techs I've talked to have worked with it. Basically say it's a no-miss base. It's really, really good. It has become a favorite on the World Cup. The skis that have showed up with that base, they're either putting them in the right mold settings or the base is really good. And I think I have, based on limited personal experience on this pair and based on feedback from techs who are working at a World Cup level, zero problem endorsing that change. Is going to be really positive. I think that's a great universal base material. And I think having a base that's got a little wider range and a higher peak to the bell curve, in terms of the optimal performance, I think it does make it easier for someone to pick Salomon for a one-pair solution. Just get the universal base. It's really good.
Yeah.
In the past, I've really kind of wanted people to have a clear base for wet and a cold base for cold, but this universal base probably.
And that universal base will be on the classic skis as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The other thing is that they've changed some of the carbon. The previous skis had this thin ply carbon that had like a braid in it. This is a different carbon top sheet. And here's where I'm not totally clear on how this difference plays on the snow. I haven't weighed the skis to see if they're different, but there's enough variation between pairs that it would be hard to detect. We have a sample of one pair, and it skis great. It was energetic. It felt more snappy and energetic to me than other skis that I've felt in a similar flex range. So part of the reason that I think we've gone high on mid-flex and camber values is that there is the availability of really good strength behind the foot to provide some snap, but a lot of the cambers and fit characteristics tend to push the camber too low at full weight to get that and utilize it. And this ski felt both really accessible at a relatively low 2.1, but also snappy and energetic. And maybe it's just the specific camber, maybe it's that change in material. We've got to see more skis to really understand whether we're seeing a substantive advance in the performance of the ski beyond the base material. But that is a change. So it's a new model. It's a new ski.
So I don't think I stepped on one Salomon Classic ski. New ski
I did.
this year. You did.
Yeah. Salomon Classic skis have been a little enigmatic to deal with for me. They are not the easiest to get just right. I find that we need to go a little high on kick, but it's easy to go out of range and get to the point where they're not quite accessible and the kick force isn't that high. The material is really, really rapid. They tend to have a pretty long camber arm behind the foot. The material thickness in the tail stays really thick behind the foot, and then it thins off pretty quickly. And as we look at the progression of the contact points from a loading perspective, they tend to move a ton right around halfway, whereas other skis tend to come up and consolidate their contact progression at about that point, where you're moving kind of from that sort of half-weighted double pole or standing further back on the ski into active loading for kicking. The Salomons are really, really active and open there. And I think the reason they did it was trying to keep the tail free in the double pole release. When you finish a double pole and you're a little bit on the heels, they wanted the ski really to be sitting free and high and have that release on double pole be super, super fast. Double poles are really, really important part of racing. And double pole speed is critical, and the Salomon Classic skis do deliver really, really free run out on the double pole. And I think that contributes to their overall tendency to have really good speed. Mm-hmm. But when you get the camber too low, you drag. When you get the camber too high, you have a hard time getting the kick. You need enough shape in the front so it doesn't flatten out too much and you don't pitch forward. It's a tricky pocket to balance, and so it takes work on our end to get a ski that's universal and good. So it's not the easiest to work with, but the rewards are there if you find them. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think the skate skis will be super interesting with the changes. We really need to see more samples of them, but I think it's going to be fast.
Nice.